human self presents to me many challenges that burden me. My heart center shines and calls to me. This is who I choose to be. Sometimes lessons.
Welcome to the Vibrational Alchemy Podcast. This is Penny Fisher, and we are so glad you are joining us for this week's episode. Hello, beautiful friends. How are you all? I hope you're well. I hope you know how happy I am to be with you and be sharing this time in this space with you. Real quickly before we get started, I've had a number of people ask where they can find the rest of the recording of Gordon's song, This Is Who I Choose to Be. It is available on our website, which is vibrationalalchemy.net. And if you look in the upper left-hand corner of the homepage, there's a little, I have to work on this. There's a little teeny gray word that says store. And if you click in there, This Is Who I Choose to Be is available, along with 2 other of his beautiful original pieces. And we're getting ready to upload some other things in there too as well for you to help you and support you on your way. And speaking of supporting you, how are things going for you out there? We worked last week around this idea about releasing restriction, right? About noticing where we put people in boxes, right? When we say they have to be this way or they have to be that way, and allowing ourselves to release that and simply let them be, let them have their journey and their experience, hold them in the container of compassion, and then being really brave and being willing to notice that the things that we want to put other people in boxes for are places where we are holding that kind of judgment against and putting restrictions on ourselves. And then working with those in one of our teachers, Aaron, say, working with that reality in a skillful way. So I'm hoping I can put another tool in your toolbox today as we continue our journey here of living a life of balance and ease. I am reading a book with a group of friends, group of colleagues. The book is called The Greatest Salesman in the World, and the author's name is O.G., like the 2 letters, O.G. Mandino. And the book is really amazing. It's at least as far as I'm in, it's not really about sales. It's about finding our way back to, I don't even want to say the best versions of ourselves, but the authentic versions of ourselves that we truly are, right? However, there is one chapter that I am reading now, and the way the book is structured, you read chapters over and over again. And as I'm really living and marinating in this chapter, I noticed that the narrator talks a lot about this idea of failure. And it's really pushing my buttons, right? It's really, really triggering me. And so I've done what I'm always encouraging and inviting you to do, which is just step back and notice, okay, this is really, like, as my friend Erin would say, stirring my cheese. What is this all about? And so that's what I want to talk to you about today. I want to talk to you about today about this idea, this concept, this construct of failure. The flip side of that coin is success. And what I'd like to do with you today is explore the possibility that there's no such thing, that failure doesn't exist, success doesn't exist, and what happens when we kind of let go of all of that. Okay. So when I think about success and failure, they feel to me, again, two sides of the same coin, which leads me to believe that they are another pairing in this belief in duality, right, that we've talked about before. And duality is this idea that we need to experience um, seemingly opposing forces in order to um, understand them, right? So, for instance, um, we need to experience darkness to understand light. We need to experience fear to understand love. I know what heat is because I've experienced cold, right? You get the idea. So this illusion of duality, and probably the greatest illusion of duality is the illusion of separation, right? It starts out as us and them, right? And it goes to human and source, God, creator, creatrix, all that is, right? We believe that there's something separate, that we are not that. We could never be that. And so there has to be something outside of ourselves. And that's that duality, right? And I couldn't possibly be good enough. So good and bad, another set of dualistic um, constructs. And this um, idea of needing duality um, comes from the place where source energy, pure source, pure love, pure light sought to know itself, sent itself through this prism of creation, refracted into rays or individual aspects of its pure essence so that it could know itself. And as that refraction continued in, let's just call it fractal form, we ended up with the soul and then the human being who felt separated from source. It wasn't true, but we bought into that illusion. But here's the thing. The reason I go back to that is if we um, if we acknowledge, it's the word I want, if we acknowledge that we are on our journey, our human journey, in order to remember our way back into wholeness, to remember our way back to oneness. And we also acknowledge the fact that we are truly divine beings. We are spirit having a human experience. Then the experience of duality is simply a tool that we've chosen, right? Because everything is about free choice, free will choice. We've chosen this experience of duality in order to help us along our path. And it has at least been my experience that the tools that we acquire along the way serve us for a period of time, right? When I was still in teaching, when I was a in public education, and I would teach children to read or to write. Sometimes they would need supports. They would need an alphabet chart, or they would need, if we were writing, they would need a list of what we would call high frequency words, or they would need, maybe they would need illustrations to help them remember certain things, right? They would need a set of prompts, whatever it was they needed. And when I taught kindergarten and first grade, they needed more of them and they were more rudimentary. As kids moved up through the grade levels and became more proficient readers and writers and speakers, they needed those tools less, and the tools that they needed changed, right? I share this with you because it is my belief that on our spiritual journey, remembering who we are, right? To back to that, um, back to truly owning the the perfection of our innate blueprint, that there are tools that we need along the way. Some of those tools will change. So, for instance, my meditation practice is not now the same as it was 30 years ago. It's very different now. And some of the tools that we used to need don't serve us as well anymore. And so we release them. And again, I share this with you because I am starting to wonder if um, this construct of duality, either or, this and that, them and us, is no longer serving us in the way that it used to. I mean, maybe we needed it at some point. I'm not judging it. It's been there. But maybe we no longer need it. And maybe, just maybe, we can start to move into a space where we can release, or let's at least play. Let's be playful about the possibility of releasing this idea of duality. And for the purposes of this episode, I want to look with you first at this idea of releasing this construct of failure and success. All right. What if we said that failure wasn't a real thing? It's not. That nothing you can do is wrong or bad. It's just what it is. It's just a space through which you move, right? And what if we replaced these ideas? Because it's not just failure. I think we always have to talk about the flip side of the coin. We have to talk about success. What if we replace the idea of failure, which is kind of like a finite point, right? I did something, it didn't go well, I failed. What if we replace that with a, a recursive process, a process that comes back and happens over and over and over again? And that process is that we make a choice, we we experience outcomes, right? When my kids were little, we used to say, make good choices because for every choice you make, there's an outcome. We used to say consequences, right? But it's that word is so like packed with negativity. I don't use it anymore. But I used to say this to my kids. Make good choices because for every choice you make, there's a consequence. You hope it's a good consequence, but if you don't make a good choice, it might not be a good consequence, right? Okay, so we make a choice, we experience an outcome. I just like that word better. The outcome gives us information. And then that opens the door then to the next opportunity we have to make a choice, experience an outcome, receive information, step into a new opportunity. Do you see it? And the reason I say you can't fail is because if you are always learning something, then you are experiencing what my boss Martin used to say, the reality of always falling forward or failing forward, right? And I'm not even going to call it failing, I'm going to call it falling. Sometimes we fall. We do. We stumble. But if we're falling forward if we are willing to receive the information that we get from decisions, from choices that we make, and stay in that place of playfulness, of wonder, of curiosity, and just notice. And that includes noticing what the emotions are that come up from the outcomes, right? We have to acknowledge those emotions. They're important, they matter. And those emotions also are part of the information, right? Does that make sense? Okay, so choices. Let me think about a choice I have made recently. Oh, well, I'll give you, here's a very simple one. We were at the grocery store the other day and I bought ice cream. And I really wanted it and it was okay and I bought it. And then that evening, as I was hanging out on the couch, I made a choice. You know what I made a choice about. I decided I was going to have some ice cream, and it was delicious, and I enjoyed every bit of it. So that was the choice. The outcome was I had an awful stomach ache. I have been really careful about putting sugar in my body. I've been really careful about not putting dairy in my body. And I got the outcome was I felt really crappy. And the information I was getting was this was not a really good fit for me. So the old me would have gone right in, and believe me, I used to spin like this for days, beating the tar out of myself, right? I can't believe you did that. What's wrong with you? I can't, there's just, you have no willpower. You're this, you failed again. You said you were going to do da, 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 da. This time I didn't do that. I made the choice to stay in the space of curiosity. I noticed that all those feelings came up. They did. The judgment came up, the anger came up, the frustration came up, the sense of hopelessness, like, am I ever going to get this right? Am I ever going to? It all came up. But instead of engaging with it, instead of hugging it to myself and feeding it energy, I just noticed it. Huh, okay, there it is again. You're doing all of this. I wonder what this is all about. Huh. And what I started to notice the more I sat with it, because I let the emotion come, I felt it, and then I just let it ebb away. And what I started to notice was I had had a tricky day that day in a number of ways. And what I think the ice cream choice was about was it was comfort food. Right? I had been angry and upset. Anger and upsetment holds a lot of fire energy, and I was trying to cool myself down. Oh, Penny, isn't that interesting? That's what you did. Huh. I wonder, honey, what you could do for yourself next time that could help you cool off besides the physical act of ingesting cold ice cream. Huh, maybe I could go for a walk. Maybe I could talk to somebody. Maybe I could go meditate a little bit or listen to some beautiful music. Oh, all right, I'm going to give that a try. Sure enough, wouldn't you know it, the next day, triggers get pushed again, probably because I asked for it, right? Because I had made a choice, received an outcome, experienced an outcome, received information, and now here came the next opportunity. And I didn't choose the ice cream on this night. I didn't. Instead, what did I do? Oh, I went and got a book that I'd been reading, this beautiful book. And I sat and read the book a little bit. And then I don't know if you can call it a formal meditation, but I just let myself rest. I put my head back. I let myself feel my feelings. I actually had a good cry. And then I felt oh so much better. Okay. So we'll see. I'm sure there will be another opportunity because this work goes in layers, right? But I wanted to share that with you just to illustrate this idea that I could have beaten myself up for doing something wrong, for having failed, but I didn't. I simply saw it as information coming to me so that I could choose to do something differently next time when a similar opportunity, a similar experience came up. So this got me thinking also about why we are so terrified of failing. And again, I can only talk about my own experiences, but I will tell you with every fiber of my being that the idea of failure brings up so much fear in me. For me, a lot of it comes from my childhood. And again, I've said this before, I had a great childhood. But the more that I've sat with it and thought about it and looked at it from the perspective of this work, I've discovered that there were a lot of subliminal messages that caused me to believe that if I was not perfect, if I did not succeed easily and the first time, that I wouldn't be considered good enough, right? And if I wasn't good enough, love was going to be withheld. It's not that I wouldn't be loved, it's that love was going to be withheld from me, right? I got to a point then where the idea of not being successful or being the best at something brought about a fear of how other people were going to see me, right? So now I externalized, I gave away my power to everyone around me because I was terrified that if I, and I'm air quoting, failed, other people were going to think less of me. So it mattered more to me what other people thought than it did what I thought about myself, right? And what I want you to consider, or what I invite you to consider, is this idea that when we are willing to release all of this fear, when we are willing to notice when that fear comes up and take a breath and say, you know what? I'm going to take that and set it off to the side because that's not mine. My only job is to learn to love myself. When I can learn to love myself, one experience, one choice, one outcome, one set of information, one opportunity at a time, I move back into alignment with who I truly am, with who I was meant to be. And it's easier and easier for me to remember my true innate blueprint of perfection, right? So I've got to share this with you because when this stuff happens, I just think it's so super cool. Right before I sat down to record this, I pulled an oracle card from a deck called the Spiral Oracle. The author's name is Lily Acuna, and the card I pulled is called Cool Forest Shade. And I have just got to read for you what the guidebook said because it was so perfect to what we're talking about. The guidebook says this: I have already realized that the perfect time to do things does not exist. Fear of making a mistake is to die slowly, to live halfway as if in an eternal rehearsal. Daring to build or dismantle in order to grow means losing one's balance. So, with courage, I go out to find myself. Because if I don't, I invite the danger of getting lost. And as I was kind of letting that simmer, as I was getting ready and getting set up here, it occurred to me that when we buy into this idea of failure, when we believe that success matters more than learning, we actually cut off an aspect of abundance that the universe wants to bring to us. And the aspect I'm talking about is opportunity, right? We talked about that as the fourth um, piece of this recursive, this recurring process. It's the garden hose again. When I'm open to whatever comes, good, bad, ugly, whatever it is, I am in full flow. But when I go into this grasping of I have to be the best, I have to succeed, I can't make a mistake, I can't let anybody else know when I've made a mistake, I'll cover it up, I'll fix it. We put a kink in the garden hose and we cut off this flow of opportunity. And when the opportunities come, we cut off the potential that we have to learn and to grow. We end up in that place. What's the definition? Repeated actions with the expectation of a different outcome. When we repeat the same actions over and over and we expect a different outcome, that's the definition of insanity. We're not climbing the ascension spiral if we live in that space, right? So if we can release this idea of I it's it I have to be successful, I have to avoid failure. When we make a choice, my darlings, to to not give a rat's patootie about avoiding failure. When failure isn't an option because we're done buying into that illusion. We don't believe in it anymore. We discover this freedom that comes from the true deep knowing that we can't make a mistake. When we wake up every morning believing that we can't get the day wrong, and even if something goes differently than we had wanted or anticipated, all it is an outcome and information that's going to feed us forward into the next opportunity. We can live differently. We can walk in the world with this sense of abandon. We can we can function from this space of an open heart, right? We can be willing to make those choices, get curious about the outcomes, receive this information from this place of expansion, and step into the next opportunity knowing, like we know the sun is coming up tomorrow, that all is well. What do we say? That we are loved and we are love. If we are willing to make friends with the fear, if we release that idea that we can possibly fail, if we release that attachment to success, it frees us up to move through life like small children, with wonder, with curiosity, always asking, how can I connect more deeply with who I am, with my inner light, with my true nature, with my higher self? It allows us to release that need for duality. It allows us to come into full alignment with our soul purpose, with our divine I am presence, our higher selves. For that is who we have been, it's who we are, it's who we'll always be. My darlings, it was never about success or failure, ever. You are too beautiful and too perfect to ever fail. And when you release that construct, it frees you up to be who you choose to be in this world. So, as always, I would invite you to hold those moments when you feel like you failed or when you're holding on to success. Use your breath to take them into your sacred heart chamber. Rest there. Breathe. Invite in the flow of the cosmic matrix, that love and light from the cosmic heart, the heart of Divine Mother that loves you unconditionally without reservation, no matter what. And just let that tension from the duality, from the belief in the duality, just let it rest and let it be infused and saturated with love so that it eventually transforms back into love. Because it's all it's ever been. Because it's an aspect of you and that's who you are. And the more you are willing to notice those moments as you move through your day-to-day life, where you are deeply committed to avoiding failure at all costs, when you are able to notice where that causes contraction in your body, the easier it gets to just breathe into it, to notice a note, to say, "Ah, here you are again. What are you here to teach me? I wonder what I could do differently." It becomes your default setting, as we say, right? And the more you allow yourself distance, the more you become the observer, the easier it is to just come back into that state of equilibrium, right? Think about duality, man. It's like a pendulum. It swings us from one side to the other, and we're exhausted. We want to rest in the center, in the alignment with the heart. It's not easy work always. Sometimes it is. But I promise you, it gets easier and easier, right? Because practice, what's the expression? Practice makes perfect. Well, that's not true. I'm just saying. Practice makes permanent. And the more you practice this, the easier it will be to navigate it with ease and with grace. the easier it is to come back into that connection with the sacred heart, with the cosmic heart, knowing peace, knowing the reality of who you are, divine, perfect, pure love and light. That is how Source sees you, because it is who you are. And it is my deep and sincere and profound wish that each of you would see yourself as Source sees you, perfect, divine, filled with love and light. I love you all, and I am so grateful to you for being with me today. I am Penny Starhart. This has been the Vibrational Alchemy Podcast. And until we are together again, please remember, always and in all ways, you are loved and you are love.
This is who